One of the things that's important to talk about for just a minute is the importance and significance of first-party data. One of the things that we've maintained, this has actually been a belief of the trade desk since before we'd written a single line of code, was that an advertiser's first-party data is more valuable to them than anyone else's data. And we've seen this with the biggest brands in the world. They would rather have their own data than have Google's data or Facebook's data or anybody else's data. Because of course, those are the people that actually bought your product. So the most valuable feedback or the most valuable data that you can use are those about the customers who already know and love your product, so that you can then look-alike model to find other people like them. If you can do that well, that to me is the foundation for good marketing. No matter what channel you're using, whether you're using CTV or you're using email, that is the very best way for you to figure out how to target and spend your money efficiently, is to thoroughly understand the customers that you have. Now, I know there are a number that struggle to get data. Sometimes if you're a retailer, you have to get that from the shops themselves and you have to pay for that. Typically speaking, I will say that that is worth it. And so there is almost always a way for somebody to get data, and you can work with our trading teams to help you figure out where to find that. But there is almost always a way to get data. But if there isn't data, I would start with, how can I get a proxy for that? So sometimes it's really hard, for instance, with auto manufacturers for them to get data on what's actually sold. Of course, they know those that have bought and sold cars, but it can be very difficult to get that data into the marketing process. So sometimes they'll use proxies, like people that went to the website and used the car builder. That shows a deep level of intent for somebody to really consider buying it. But they spend some time thinking about what is a proxy for real conversion or intent, and that's the second best thing. Beyond that, there's also a temporary seed or a seed until we can get more insight, which is one that you can use third-party data and say, well, in the case of auto intenders, I can buy data from a third-party data company that are auto intenders, and I can use that as a proxy before I get those car builder data elements, or before I also get real conversions. So all of those are ways to get first-party data. So while there's all different types of data, and all of it can be valuable on different levels, to be sure, the most valuable data for you is your data. And it's important for you to protect that, to use that, and then as you use it, to generate more. And this is the reason why great reporting is so important, because when you report on what worked and what didn't work, you learn and your marketing forever gets better, which is different than alternatives where in some platforms or other ecosystems, you take your data, you put it in their ecosystem, and then they make decisions on your behalf. Doesn't mean that that can't improve in their ecosystem, but in terms of you learning in a way that you can take it with you and evolve, that cycle is really critical to you learning and growing as a marketer, which is something that we're incredibly committed to inside of our platform. One of the things that I'm most excited about in Kokai is that we fused together a product we started shipping before Kokai, which is called Galileo. And Galileo is essentially the onboarding of first-party data. The reason we called it Galileo is because it's kind of like a constellation where you start at the bottom of the funnel with your conversions, and then you can map it to all different media throughout the ecosystem, but also help with your attribution. But in order to do both of those well, you really need to start with quality seed data. So Galileo is the way for you to onboard first-party data, and our goal was to make that as easy as possible. So Galileo sometimes can get a little bit complicated simply because there are so many different ways to onboard first-party data, but we've essentially spent all of our time thinking about how can we make it as easy as possible and give you as many options as possible to onboard that, whether that's coming out of a CRM or whether that's coming out of a flat file. All of those are important ways for you to onboard your first-party data. And throughout the platform, you'll see relevance score, which is essentially saying, let's take that seed or that first-party data that you've onboarded using Galileo, and let's compare that to the general audiences or the audiences that you're covering. So if a particular ad group has a relevance score of 25x, it means based on the source of truth, your seed, we think the people that you're targeting are roughly 25 times more likely to convert than the general population. That is only made possible by you leveraging your first-party data. So in order to get the best out of Kokai, you have to be leveraging your first-party data on the platform. Big or small, I would highly encourage you to put that to work to get the best out of Kokai.